Just days after protesters filled the streets of Aba demanding answers about the detention of Nnamdi Kanu, something unexpected happened inside Nigeria's judicial system. A judge connected to the appeal proceedings suddenly stepped aside. And that single decision has now ignited a new wave of debate across Nigeria. Supporters of Kanu say the decision exposes problems inside the legal process. Critics say it changes nothing. But one question is now spreading everywhere. Why did the judge step aside? And what does it really mean for the future of this case? Welcome to Africa News Story. Only a few days ago, the streets of Aba were filled with chants and raised voices. Videos spreading online showed protesters marching through the city, demanding one thing: the release of Nnamdi Kanu. The protest gained national attention after activist Omoyele Sowore shared footage of the demonstration. In his caption, he claimed soldiers had been deployed in the city but protesters refused to back down. But what really caught people's attention was the message coming from the protesters. They were demanding that the Nigerian government show the legal justification for keeping Kanu in detention. The demand was directed toward the administration of Bola Ahmed Tinubu and the judiciary handling the case. For supporters of Kanu, the protest represented frustration that has been building for years. They argue that the legal process surrounding the case has dragged on for too long. But critics quickly responded, saying the courts must be allowed to operate independently without pressure from the streets. Yet while that debate was still unfolding, something unexpected happened inside the courtroom. One of the judges connected to the appeal proceedings stepped aside from the case. Justice Bower recused himself. To understand why the recusal of the judge has suddenly become such a heated national conversation, you have to understand how emotionally charged the entire case of Nnamdi Kanu has become across Nigeria. For many Nigerians, this is not just about a court case anymore. It has become a symbol of justice to some, and a symbol of national security concerns to others. That is exactly why every single development surrounding the case immediately spreads across social media like wildfire. When news started circulating that a judge involved in the appeal proceedings had stepped aside, reactions exploded almost instantly. People began asking questions. Some wondered if the legal process was finally shifting. Others believed it was simply a normal judicial procedure. But the strongest reactions came from ordinary Nigerians online. Many people began pointing out something very specific about the judge who recused himself. One user named Jeff Ease wrote a comment that quickly started gaining attention online. He said, "He has every reason to recuse himself from Kanu's case because he will be seen as being biased. He was the judge that upheld IPOB as a terrorist organization in the appeal court." That comment immediately triggered debate. Because if a judge previously ruled on a matter related to the same organization connected to the case, some people argue it could create a perception of bias. Now, legally speaking, perception matters a lot in the judicial system. Courts are not only supposed to be fair, they must also appear fair to the public. And in controversial cases like this one, even the smallest doubt can lead to questions about impartiality. Another social media user also shared a similar view. A commenter using the name Chris Popt wrote, "It is better he stepped down. He is the one that prescribed IPOB as a terrorist organization, so it is better he steps down. We don't want him to handle the case." Again, the focus was the same concern: bias. Or at least the possibility that some people might believe there could be bias. And that is why judicial recusals sometimes happen. Legal experts explain that judges occasionally step away from cases when they believe their past involvement in related matters could raise questions. It does not necessarily mean there was wrongdoing. Sometimes it is simply done to protect the credibility of the court itself. But in Nigeria's political environment, things are rarely interpreted in a purely legal way. Public perception often turns legal decisions into political conversations. And that is exactly what is happening right now. Supporters of Kanu see the recusal as a meaningful development. Some believe it shows the legal process may be correcting itself. Others believe it may lead to new momentum in the case. But critics of Kanu strongly reject that idea. They argue the recusal changes absolutely nothing about the legal facts surrounding the case. To them, the accusations tied to the case are still serious and must go through the full judicial process. So once again, Nigeria finds itself divided. Two completely different interpretations of the same event. But the public reaction did not stop there. Another comment circulating online expressed even deeper frustration with how long the entire situation has continued. One user wrote, "Nigeria government and their judiciary don't have ears. No need of prolonging this matter. Free M&K and free yourselves. Any other steps will be later." That comment reflects a sentiment shared by many supporters who believe the case has dragged on for too long. For them, the issue is no longer just about legal arguments. It is about trust. Trust in institutions. Trust in the government. Trust in the courts. And when trust becomes part of a national conversation, the stakes become even higher. Because once public confidence begins to weaken, every legal move becomes subject to intense scrutiny. This is why the decision of one judge stepping aside has suddenly become such a huge national discussion. Not because recusal itself is unusual, but because of the larger political and emotional context surrounding the case. And when you combine courtroom decisions with street protests like the ones recently seen in Aba, the impact becomes even more powerful. Events in the streets begin influencing conversations about events inside the courtroom. And sometimes, the two worlds collide. Right now, Nigeria is watching very closely to see what happens next. Because the recusal of the judge has not ended the story. In many ways, it has only opened a new chapter in the ongoing legal and political drama surrounding the detention of Nnamdi Kanu. Across social media, radio discussions, and political commentary programs, people are now asking the same question. What does this mean for the future of the case? Will the legal process move faster? Will there be further complications? Or will the situation remain locked in a long and complex judicial battle? For supporters of Kanu, this moment has renewed their determination. They believe the recusal confirms something they have been saying for years. That the legal journey surrounding the case has been filled with controversies and unusual developments. From arrests to court orders, appeals, and international legal questions, the case has passed through several twists that continue to fuel debate. But critics strongly reject that narrative. They insist that the judicial system must be allowed to work without pressure from protests or public opinion. According to them, the courts cannot make decisions based on what people shout in the streets or write in comment sections. They argue that allowing protests to influence court outcomes would create a dangerous precedent. So once again, the country finds itself facing two completely different perspectives. One side believes justice demands immediate action. The other side believes patience and due process must take priority. And this is exactly why the conversation keeps growing. Because neither side is willing to back down. Meanwhile, the recent protest in Aba has also added another layer to the situation. When large groups of people gather to demand something related to an ongoing legal case, it sends a powerful signal. It shows that the issue is not confined to courtrooms anymore. It has entered the public square. And once that happens, controlling the narrative becomes almost impossible. Political leaders begin watching closely. Security agencies begin paying attention. Media outlets begin amplifying every new development. And ordinary citizens begin forming stronger opinions. All of this creates an atmosphere where every small legal decision can trigger national debate. And that is exactly what we are witnessing right now. But here is the question that many people are now asking. Will this recusal actually influence the direction of the case? Or will it simply be remembered as one minor moment in a much longer legal battle? Some legal analysts believe the case will continue normally with other judges handling the proceedings. Others believe the recusal could introduce delays while adjustments are made inside the court process. Either way, one thing is very clear. The conversation surrounding Nnamdi Kanu is far from over. If anything, it appears to be entering a new phase. A phase where public opinion, legal arguments, and political narratives are all colliding at the same time. And when that happens, predicting the final outcome becomes extremely difficult. But now the most important part of this conversation is not what I think. It is what you think. Do you believe the judge stepping aside will change anything in the case? Or do you believe it is simply a normal judicial decision that will not affect the final outcome? Do you think the protests demanding Kanu's release are justified? Or should legal cases remain completely independent from public demonstrations? And finally, do you think Nigeria's judicial system is handling this situation fairly? Or do you believe something deeper is happening behind the scenes? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Because the truth is, debates like this are exactly what shape national conversations. And sometimes, the most powerful part of a story is not the events themselves. It is the questions they leave behind. If you want more deep African political stories like this one, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications.